And without further ado, this leads me to my next speaker, Dr. Ahmed Bugre. Is Dr. Ahmed here? Ah, there you are. What I would encourage you to do is please go online and you can see it on our program. There's a QR code. You need to read everybody's bio because I'm not going to have the time to go through everybody's bios today. I'm just going to have to give them a brief introduction. But we have exceptional speakers today. And Ahmed, you really, I sat at dinner last night and we had a conversation that we could have had for another 3 months. There is so much that Ahmed has done in his life, honestly, that it's quite exceptional, all of the different roles that you've played. But right now, he's the senior advisor on immigration at the African Union Commission. He does incredible work with regards to shelter and support for migrants in Malta. And he has an incredible vision around how to reunite families with the missing and the dead throughout Africa in terms of migration. You will hear his own story, you will hear and feel his passion, and we're exceptionally honored to have you here. I don't have to say anything more about you because I know I'm waiting to hear your story, which I said to you last night. I want to hear it directly today. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy Dr. Bugre's presentation. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I don't know what to say after you've been introduced as such. Let me just say that I was in Accra and it was incredibly hot. So I spent all my time under the air condition. So it got to my chest after I went back to Ethiopia, where I live now, and it's so you might hear one or two coughs when I'm speaking, but it's such an honor to be here today. And I want to thank Vanessa and the team and ICRC. Where is Steve, my brother? He's there. And whenever I talk about migration, I'm very passionate about the subject because I am one myself. And I think that in this room, almost all of us have traveled from one place to another. If I may have your attention today to share with you how DNA can become a tool to not only identify, but also to return migrants to their families. I was born in Ghana, but I grew up all of my life in Malta because at the young age of 13, 14, I left my home. And that is simply because as a young boy, I'm the youngest of 9 children. And my parents were very poor. I don't even remember. I don't have a photo of my childhood. How many of you here can identify with that? Because I grew up in a very small village. But I had a bright mind when I was very young. And my father was an imam. Now I'm a Christian. That's why my name is called Ahmed, and that's a different story. But when I was growing up, my father wanted me to be a farmer and to take after him as an imam. And we used to quarrel a lot. He used to beat me a lot. You know, he had the discipline by beating. And I remember I used to read books and my mind was just looking forward to learning. So when I went to secondary school, I met a priest who came from Malta to Ghana as a missionary. So I used to go to his house, clean the compound, wash his clothes, iron, go errands for him. And he recognized that maybe I might have a future. So that's how I got to know him. But I couldn't go to Malta, so I took the route desert route that you hear about people dying and stuff, made it to Libya, from Libya, crossed the sea, and from the sea, I made it to Malta. I barely had my O-levels when I left home. And today I have 2 PhDs, have worked around the world to support African brothers and sisters who have taken the same route for the opportunity to better their lives and to support their families. I can tell you that sometimes if I don't send money to my village, some people will not eat or go to school, even as we talk today. So when I talk about migration, I talk about migration as a tool for development of Africa. I have come back as a diaspora. I've come back to Africa only 1 year ago. I've lived in Europe all my life, 40 years of my life. I grew up in Europe, but I came back to Africa because I'm a son of Africa. And I care about this continent. What happens here, what happens to people here. And for those of you who have had the chance to live abroad, you know that we Africans, we live in communities wherever we go. And so today I just want to share with you, if I can go to the next slide, some important statistics. So if I can go to slide number 1. And I say that we should change the narrative about migration. Today, migration has been criminalized. Those who are leaving their families to go make a life, to support their communities, whether from the rural areas to the urban centers, or whether they cross the seas. The first slide, please. I have this. Okay. Do you have a mic? I don't like standing when I'm speaking. Okay. I just want to see also my slide, huh? Thank you. So, yeah. Migration is a human phenomenon. You read the Bible, Genesis, first pages, is about mobility. People have always moved from place to place as a way of adapting to changing circumstances and scenarios. So when you talk about migration, you are talking about human beings, talking about me, talking about you. How many of you in this room have never traveled? Now, I want to borrow the way that Professor Bruce yesterday captured the people. And if I may, yesterday we went to eat and this guy was graduating. So he took a photo with this guy and we were joking. We said, if this guy only knew the legend he's standing with, you know, he would have been jumping on his feet. But he was taking a picture with only a white man. But you see, travel, migrating, moving, whether voluntary or involuntary, brings people together. Whenever I go home to Ghana, my mom passed away now, she used to tell me, you are my son, you are in a black skin, but you think like a white man. You are a white black boy. And that is because of migration. That is because of travel. So when I talk about migration, we talk about mobility, sometimes forced, sometimes voluntary. And I want to change the narrative because you see, when you talk about migration from a European perspective, it is criminalized, or American perspective. Because when the Europeans left Europe during the wars and the famine and disease and discovered the new lands that they now call their own, they were migrating also. America doesn't belong to Americans, does it? Australia doesn't belong to Australians, does it? In Africa, we are all black, white, same. And that's because migration is all about adaptability and resilience. When you want to have a new life, the first thing you want to do is, I want to go get what I want to have, wherever that is. So the linkages between migration and development is very clear. Remittances. So when we talk about returning people back to their families, whether dead or alive, we're actually talking about human dignity and according them the respect that they have. All of us here have buried someone that we know. But every human being, as a lawyer now, is endowed with what we call rights. A person is endowed with those inalienable rights. The right to migrate is enshrined under international law. The law guarantees anyone to move from one place to another country without being criminalized. The rights of a person for dignity is enshrined under law. And let me just give you some statistics here. I will not go through them, but currently there are 200, this is just those who have been captured, so it's more than that. Over 280 million persons on the move globally, from country to country. And these are only those who cross borders. It doesn't take those who move from villages to cities within the same country. And in Africa, it is estimated, and this is from the UN, that over 40 million, nearly 41 million people are crossing from one country to the other. Kenya, Uganda, blah, blah, Ghana, they're moving. And you can see that the ratio now has almost become 50-50 between female and male. But in particular to Africa, 80 to 90% of people's movement is within the continent itself. The myth that people are crossing to other European countries or other countries is not true. That is only forming about between 2 to 3% of mobility on the continent. And in Eastern Africa in particular, and West Africa in particular, 90%, I think between Uganda and Kenya, is almost 98% within this region alone that people are moving. You see, and when people move, there's one thing about people, is that we are all born and we all die. Sometimes, not the way we want it, but many times through difficult circumstances. This is what is recorded in the last years, that between 2014 and 2020, globally, 49,000 people have been recorded to be missing. And in Africa, it's about 35,000 people who have died in their journey. And this is where it becomes very close to my heart. When I left Africa and I have seen people die, I've seen people drink their urine in the desert as young people. And when Africans move, there's one thing particular about African movement. We move in groups. We don't move alone because we have the community. When you go somewhere, it's because you know someone who is living somewhere. I knew this priest who came to my village. So I wanted to go and meet him wherever he is. Yeah, I had a target, Malta, and I knew someone. And so when people travel, they move in groups and they communicate and they keep links with their families. And where Africans go, they embed themselves in a religious community or tribal communities. Those of you here who have studied abroad, you will see Kenyan society, Ghanaian society. And even from that, you have Kikuyus and you have got that one. So no African is moving without being noticed by someone else. We always have a way of connecting. And nowadays, it's even easier because we have telephones. We have mobile phones. When I used to live in Malta, I knew when boats would leave Malta, when they will cross the sea, when they will arrive, who is the captain of the boat. We kept this information to ourselves. But as I told you, in my mobility, in my movement, I became a Christian. And I was one day invited to a prayer group by someone. I used to be I used to stutter, really a stammerer, really, really bad. They told me, oh, come, Ahmed, you. I was very, very religious, and I still am. And this guy said to me, Jesus can heal you. And I go, don't give me that nonsense. I grew up in a home. By 11, I had read my Quran, blah, blah. Guess what? I went to a prayer meeting, got prayed, and got healed. So I became a Christian, and I was a pastor for 10 years. So when people are moving, they call me. They say, we are coming. We are leaving Libya today or tonight, and we'll be arriving in Malta or Italy or Lampedusa tomorrow. And they will give me their phone coordinates. So since 2002, I have the death certificate of every African who died in Malta. Not only that, I know where they are buried. Because as an African who had lived in Malta for all these years, I became an elder. So people will call me, and even the mortuary, when an African died, they tell me, oh, Ahmed, there's a black guy here. Can you come? Can you come sign? Especially as a lawyer, as a judge. So I will sign, and I became the next of kin for all Africans. And that is how I got interested in this, because sometimes when you call the family and you say, listen, hello, how are you? I'm calling you because our sister, our brother has passed away. They don't believe it. I tell you this story one time. Ethiopia is one place where Ethiopians or Eritreans, they like their body back home. But many Ethiopians who travel will declare that they are Eritreans. Why? Because Ethiopians do not qualify for asylum in Europe, but Eritreans do. I never knew the difference between Eritrea, Ethiopia. I didn't have that difference. So in Europe, at least where I live in Southern Europe, all Ethiopians that I know, except those who have political asylum, which is less than 1%, I only know 2 people who were given asylum because they were political asylum seekers, but all the other people were Eritreans. So my first death, this guy came to me and told me, I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to kill myself. And I'm going, Ermias, well, you're joking. The next day, he hanged himself in front of my office. So we had to call the family and say, he died. When I called his mother, I remember I said to him, our brother is passed, and what do we do? The first thing she told me is, if you need money, I will send you money. My son is not dead. A denial. And the next thing she told me was, send his body home. I was going, it's too expensive. It's between 6,000 to 8,000 euros to send him back home. Can we just bury him here? And after 3 days in discussing, she told us, okay, you can go ahead and bury my son. But there are thousands of people who die who are not identified, or they are identified in Malta, but we cannot trace who their family is in Africa. And that's where DNA comes in. This famous DNA story. I just got to know Steve in Tunisia. We were in Tunisia a couple of weeks ago. And for two reasons why this is important. Because for Africans, burial is very important for us. Funerals are more important than the living. We all know that, no? We love our dead. We respect our families. And the other reason is, sometimes you call the family, you bury someone, and the family is grieving because they say, only God knows that he has passed away, but they never heal from that grief. So it is important that we use this DNA as a way to reunite the people that have passed or that are gone missing, some in detention, some on the journey, to reunite them with their families. In Africa, as I end, our burial practices do not allow us to keep dead bodies for a long time. You're dead, 12 hours, you have to be buried. And we don't care about identifying who has died. But because every human being is endowed with dignity, we need to reverse that. We need to keep the records. So these challenges that I have listed here pose a challenge to returning people. And therefore, I want to suggest this, that we use DNA to bridge the gap. For example, in Malta, as I told you, every African migrant who died, they take their DNA, they are buried, and we know where their graves are. But because Malta is a very small island, the bones of every person is kept in a box after 3 years and put in a place. And I was telling Steve, I said, Steve, what would happen if we can start repatriating these human remains to their families, that they can grieve, that they can perform the funeral, and they can rest. And that is how I see DNA in being. So that requires us to collaborate, law enforcement, the legal community, NGOs, and the like. If you have any questions that you can ask me, I'll be available. I could speak here till tomorrow morning about these things. But thank you again for according me this opportunity to share with you this few thoughts and how we can collaborate with you. Now that I am back in Africa as an advisor at the African Union, I want to put this issue of missing migrants on the continental agenda. And most of you here are government officials, legal practitioners, forensic experts, and I'll be available how to collaborate and see how we can bring our brothers and our sisters who left to make their lives better and that to their family, and bring them home to rest in their communities and their families. Thank you so much for your time.
You did. This is your present. But thank you so much. It's such a shame we have such a short amount of time for each presenter, because as you will hear, you just want to keep listening and hearing, and that's why we have tea breaks.